mentioned that I'll be presenting with Paul Bolton today. Paul Bolton has been preparing the module on information architecture, which is what we'll be focusing on today. And this is the area that we're going to be talking about, is what we call the semantic friction trap. The challenges we have with getting the semantics right. And it's nice to see Carolyn Raton here. I'd love to get some of her feedback as well. There's quite a few questions on the English language, so that's a good place to start. So, in just going back, our very first week is your data GenAI ready, and we defined AI ready to have the right business alignment, the right architecture, the right governance, and the right corporate memory, and that's what Paul Frobler addressed. Paul, I'm hoping you can still see the screen. Can you see the screen? Just to keep me honest. Okay, so
Yes,
Paul
can see you.
Frobler did the business architecture, and he spoke about, remember we had the chat on Archi with the goals, the objectives, the value, and we had that chat over there. And then today we're going to be talking, during that week, we spoke about the three barriers why data can't activate in the AI ones, and typically they're saying it's discovery. We can't find the data. We don't understand the context. Basically, what we're saying there is when the meaning doesn't travel with data, right? So we get the data, but we don't get the meaning. And then the trust in terms of the quality. And again, that's what we were talking about with Dale. So those are the areas. So our second one, and that's the talk today, is on this information architecture. How do we get this right? How do we bring this context with us, bring this business semantics along the road with us? And I found that to be lacking and sorely lacking in certain areas. Okay, so then just in terms of the review of the course and what we're trying to deal with is really take it from business strategy to execution to build an AI-ready enterprise architecture. These are some of the frameworks, and we'll be looking at these different areas in different times. For example, today we'd be looking at ISO 11179. And we'll show you some of those areas over here. Okay, so outcomes, business alignment, integrated architecture. We should be able to flow from the business architecture to the information architecture, to the data architecture, to the technology, to data governance. And we shouldn't have these things operating in silos, very similar to data governance and records management. The nice talk we had from Ian Cornish yesterday. So we want to do governance by design. We want to focus on the knowledge, make sure that our knowledge has been retained and the right knowledge has been worked on. And then, of course, we're constantly mapping to frameworks. So we'll talk about the BizBoc, the DCAN, the DMBOK, ISO 42001, and the risk management framework, and then a level of practical application. So this is the flow of the course: architecture, information, data, technology. And I do see us combining application and tech together. So I haven't separated that out like TOGAF does it. This is basically a structure that DCAM has put forward: governance and knowledge, and then a project. So here was the business alignment, just to talk through again. Remember, we had a value stream that Paul Problem modeled, and there was the concept of settling a claim, and this is how we deliver value to our stakeholders. So we have stakeholder maps, value propositions, and I see Esther's here as well, and she was asking a few questions on how do we get it, how do we bring the value into a lot of this. And these are the capabilities and so a capability is what do we need to be capable of doing to deliver the value proposition. And that's what these capabilities are. They are not business processes. the next level down, if you were to drill down from a capability cube map, you'd get the business process. Module 2, the objectives, is the business glossary, the semantic layer, and then going to a conceptual model, and then introducing structured knowledge, and then assigning ownership, specifically around the terms, and aligning with frameworks. Okay. So that's what we're trying to do. But I wanted to just, before I let Paul loose on the information architecture, I wanted to just share something with you. And it's certainly been a personal journey. I must share with you that I was really impressed with an organization. I wonder how many of you know a company called Intra-Line and Interverse Pty Limited. That's Mark Atkins and Terry Smith. Has anyone done their course on writing business definitions? Anyone read their book? And I think the book's title was Data Governance Leads Risk Management. And they spoke a lot about writing business definitions. Okay. And the thing I liked about what they did, so to give you an experience of where I was doing lots of conceptual data models. I was building the data models. When I read the business requirements, I would look at the nouns and the verbs, and I would start to create entities and relationships. I'm not too sure how many people don't do that. But I did find it caused problems, and it caused some hiccups. And I remember having a discussion with Terry and Mark, and I said, okay, I was building a definition for claim premium, and I went ahead and I built the data model. And the first thing they said when they saw my data model was, Howard, don't do that. Okay, that's not the right thing to do. And I battled with it. I was just sharing with Paul Bolton this afternoon that I struggled with that because I was so used to looking at the data model to get the understanding. And I'm sure there are many of us that do that. PG, I know I'm going to pick on you as well. I think that's probably something you do as well, because I've seen you do it on Ellie, where you build entities and relationships, and then you do the definitions. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we do the definitions, and sometimes we leave it until there's a misunderstanding or a lack of convincing. Okay. Shane, is that when you say you're writing a book on this very approach, is it on writing the definitions first, or is it on using Ellie to build that model?
It's on those steps you talk about, which was understand the business narrative, pulling out the nouns and the verbs, and then assigning definitions. So you got me nervous now because there might be a better way. Carry on. I'm on tenterhooks.
So this is great, because I'll make sure I ask you questions when I show you a definition. Okay, but this is what they start off with, and I must admit I do like it. And they explain to me the types of ambiguity that we get. And of course, everyone talks about the LLM hallucination, but we don't mention how often we hallucinate and we get misunderstandings between ourselves. So especially with acronyms, who hasn't been caught by an acronym? I don't think there are many people. And I love this thing to say, there's XL and IO, and they say, well, if they're Latin, they're consonants, and if they are Roman, they are 40. Okay. So that was interesting. XL, extra long. We've all been caught by this. I don't know if there's anyone who hasn't been caught by it. And then we get syntactic ambiguity, and this is the chicken is ready to eat. Okay. Or the professor said on Monday he would give an exam. And this is prepositional phrase and verbals. Visiting relatives can be exhausting. Okay. Let's stop controlling people. Good data governance, verb. and we can misunderstand what they are saying. Okay. And that causes us problems. And then a lexical ambiguity, which is the presence of two or more possible meanings within a single word. And this is the problem. Over 80% of common English words have more than one meaning. A financial record, an arrangement to keep money. And so all these things are there. And then, of course, this is what our databases and our data models and our BI things suffer from. And that was actually one of the challenges that was in that, is your data GenAI ready? Do you have good definitions that the LLM will not hallucinate and we will know what to do? So these are the things that we are talking about. Okay, what is a customer? Is it a user? Is it an account holder? Is it a consumer? Okay, so part of the fundamental problem that we had, and that was pointed out by Hans Holtgren. I wonder how many of you remember the comment he made was, when we operate in these different functional areas, we've actually got this integration that we need to do between the data and the way they've called it and their terminology and the way we call it. And we've got these different functions. And there was even a comment to say, well, we will always have integration, and it's probably sometimes it's a problem trying to get a single common meaning, because we do some fantastic gymnastics like abstraction and go to the party to get everybody to agree what that party means. Okay, so this is the fundamental problem. We've got different functions. We use terminology different. We use information differently. And the other one is that ambiguous terminology takes a long time to get sorted out. So we've got a road and a journey to walk, and it's not easy. Okay. Now, I loved when working through on the platform of Terry Atkins, well, they gave us a librarian, and for every group of terms, there was a suggested author, and then there was a person who controlled the verbiage and the definitions, and they would only submit it once it adhered to the appropriate logical rules that they have built. So lots of procedures around that. Okay, so this is an interesting term. It's called those hand-wavy definitions. No, it means this. This is what it means, because we writing it as descriptive paragraphs and not functional logic. I think this is going to be the most important thing. When you write a definition as a descriptive paragraph, you are going to get ambiguity, bundling of things, and gaps. Okay. Now, I'm not sure why we do this, but what we're certainly suggesting is that we break these things down into single statements. So instead of writing a paragraph, we should be agreeing one statement at a time. And the nice thing about using that statement is that we can challenge it and we can get agreement and then we can move on. But it also should be adhering to a certain structure, subject, predicate, object, and using specific verbs that help us join these. And then there's this concept of bundling. So as soon as we have an and statement in between two objects, we've got a bundling challenge, and we're not sure what the actual behavior should be on those two different objects. So remember, subject, predicate, object. And if I've got object A and object B, I've got a challenge. Is it consistent? Should I abstract that terminology? So as a data model, I may say, well, I've got rules and guidelines. What do I abstract it to? I abstract it to a control, and that's my concept. Or do I treat them separately? Okay. And then we've got noun gaps. Stakeholders agree on the word, but have 10 different interpretations of what it does. And of course, that's where we're getting to the challenge of data modeling, is when we think this is the way that structure should look like, sometimes we get agreement, and then when we put one or two other things in there, then we get disagreement because we haven't got down to the level that we need to get down to. Now, why am I getting so pedantic about this? A lot of people may ask, and I can certainly, Paul Bolton, I know you could share, I think in the last 3 or 4 months, you've been battling with this tremendously when you've had to go to a SAP database and re-engineer from a SAP database to a physical, logical, conceptual model. And I suppose just the number of times you had to do it, and then the embarrassment when the business people say, I don't know what you're talking about. Just a quick word from you on that.
Yeah, there's some examples again later. I might repeat myself, but coming across something that you're going to mention just now, I think is about that deeper understanding of even a value domain that explains something to give you better understanding before you model it. And I shared the example with you where I received the value of domains for something called movement type out of SAP, and it's just a list of codes with a kind of a description of what it's trying to say or do, but there's no categorization or any kind of hierarchy helping us really with business meaning of what actually happened. So stock, something left a pharmacy. Why did it leave the pharmacy? Is it for patient care, or is it for transfer to another ward or something like that? So just that kind of deeper understanding of the data. And when you look at the SAP data, another example I've seen where multiple SAP codes or SAP fields are labeled as item, and it's okay. What I do with that, type thing. Right. And there's a logic to it. Yes, that item means the purchase order line item, and that item means the sales order line item, and that one means that one. But just by looking at it, it's hard to deal with and know what to get to progress. So you've got to have lots of interaction, and so this is fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, so what I did say is there's this ROI leakage where we talk about, well, we've got a use case for a data strategy, and we're going to build a data product, and then we don't have the right meaning, and then all the value that we are getting out of that thing seems to disappear. And my last statement here is policies. That what we'd like to do is use policies as code. And so we'd like to get the policies into the GenAI and the AI environment, and we'd like them to help us control what's going on in that environment. But if the logic in the policy cannot be used as a controlling mechanism, then, well, the policy is not going to be able to help us. And this is this thing of basically the AI saying, well, I don't understand this policy, I don't understand this control, and I'm not sure what it's all about or what it's trying to achieve. Okay, and I'm going to show you some terminology. So the comment that I'm making is when conceptual modeling fails early, and we get sometimes, if we're lucky, we've got a definition, and maybe we've got a set of business requirements, and then we go straight to starting to build the container for the data before we understand the content, and we start getting involved with some of these mappings and things like that we're getting. Now, I remember doing a webinar on abstraction. I remember Veronica doing the data modeling specialist exam, and we had all sorts of different types of abstractions. And one of the types of abstractions that I think there were 4 or 5, and that I picked up was, it's almost this, what they call a visualization or a presentation abstraction. What is that saying? We're going from paragraphs, we're going from text, and we're creating a visualization of the text. That's an abstraction that we're going. And the problem we're getting into is if we don't understand that text properly, we're going to create some interesting visualizations, interesting abstractions. That's where our challenge comes. And so we jump straight to entities and tables before the glossary is airtight, and we start picking up certain problems. So we're starting to abstract before we understand the meaning, And then when we go to the logical model, we starting to pick up these attributes. So the challenge is we're building the container before we understand the content and the context of what we're dealing with. Okay. Now, here's what I'm suggesting, and please, it's not me. This is Terry and Mark Atkins. They put this together. They call it the 6 friends. And these are the 6 friends. Now, I know Shane works with Beam, and he's got 7 friends. It's 5W and 2H. They add on a how many for BI, but let's not go there now. So every term must be interrogated via 7 key dimensions: a classification, a hierarchy, a why, a who, a what, a when, a where, and a how. And you could have multiple whats, right? You could have multiple whens. If we think of a frequency, it could be done end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year. And we build what's called this SPO structure, which is subject, predicate, object. And then we have the nice thing about this is that we can quickly go to a data model once we've got it defined like this. Okay, now here's the trick question for Shane and for Caroline Mouton is what voice causes us problems and causes us not to have the subject, predicate, object structure within our narrative? Can anyone tell me, Shane?
No, got me on that one.
Okay, William?
Define voice.
There's in when you write in your document, in your narrative, you can write in 2 different voices. Now,
you mean
so,
first and third?
No, no. It's active and passive voice. Okay. Caroline, I'm sure you would remember that. Where's Caroline Mouton? Is she around?
I am indeed.
Okay.
And yes, active and passive voice.
Right. So now your active adheres to this appropriately, but your passive doesn't. And so we as soon as we write in a passive voice, we actually get that the subject being ignored, and we've sort of got predicate, object, and then we don't have the by. We don't have the subject that's working on there. So that breaks that structure of the narrative. Okay. So I gave you a bit of a clue in terms of how do we pick this up. And here's an example of a definition, a data management policy. A data management policy is a set of principles and guidelines used to ensure that our data is handled correctly across the university. And you can see how it's been doing a lot of work with the King Saud University. So I've got university all over the place. It includes rules for security and quality, and it should be followed by everyone dealing with data to meet our regulatory needs. Okay, now you can see some problems with this narrative. This narrative has got 5 or 6 problems. When we write like this, we get into trouble. Can anyone suggest some problems other than Mr. Bolton? Because you've seen this slide a few times. Let's start. William, please tell me, what problems would you see with this definition?
Yeah, the very first one is you're telling me about it. You're not telling me about its purpose.
Fantastic. So there is the word it includes rules, and now we have a challenge of what does it refer to? Okay, and then Mr. Krobler also pointed out principles and guidelines. So it's a set of principles and guidelines. Okay, and there's and following on from what you said, Paul, includes rules for security and quality. Okay, and it should be followed by everyone. So are the rules followed? Are the guidelines followed? Are the principles followed? And then by everyone dealing with data to meet our regulatory needs. Again, So when you use something like Grammarly, it goes on about this stuff continually. Ah, that's correct, Paul. I'm sure. When it's always saying you're writing in the passive voice, get out of the passive voice.
Yes, and it picks up the it. It always tells you this it is ambiguous. You need to be more clear.
Right. So for the punctuation grammar Nazi.
Yes, if anybody of you if you ever text Howard, you would know that he's not the best person in the world when it comes to punctuation.
But at least I write in the active voice. Okay, so here's our problem. It's called the it and the and trap, where it's actually called pronoun poisoning. The use of it creates ambiguity, and the bundling is and it combines distinct concepts. Okay, so now we've got a challenge as to we've got distinct concepts, but we don't have a verb that talk to those distinct concepts differently. Remember, Shane, I'm glad you said that, noun and verb and stuff like that, but now I've got a bundling of objects, and I'm not sure which the verb relates to. Is it the same? And then I get into things like abstraction. Anyone experience that? I'm hoping it's just you, Caroline. Can everyone else hear you?
Fine, Caroline. Just you,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the it and trap. Okay. And when I was doing this, it reminded me of the fan trap and the what's his name?
Cousin.
That's right. No. Okay. So there's our problem. So let me work this through. There's the first issue. It includes. So use of it creates ambiguity. Does it refer to the policy? Does it refer to the data? Does it refer to the university? Okay. Machines cannot parse the pronouns well. So now we start getting into misinterpreting what we are, the prompt we're giving to the LLM. It doesn't know which one we're talking about. And so it's actually quite nice for PG. I don't know if you've seen where you have Grammarly in front of your prompt and it's telling you how to fix the thing. Now, sometimes I get impatient and I do it quickly and then I get into trouble. Okay, so the next one is principles and guidelines. This is the bundling. Now lumped together and they should be separate atomic rules. And Devo was actually making the comment of we don't have these standalone statements. They tend to run. So it is dependent on the previous statement and it should be followed. And so we're going through this incorrectly. We've got another problem, handled correctly. What does that mean? What does handled correctly mean? Our data is handled correctly across the organization. And I was saying to Paul Bolton this morning, I've been doing these policies for the last 3 months, and I've got somebody who's a doctor, and he analyzes my every single word I write, and he says, "Oh no, this is not right. I thought PG was bad, but I met another one who can challenge me even more." And he picks these things up, and it's amazing. Now, the other one is missing actors. Everyone is too broad for accountability. What do we mean by everyone? Is it data stewards? Is it owners? Who must be there? And then we've got this passive logic. Okay, so because we don't have this complete logic, we've sort of got the vibe of the policy, but we don't have this must be done. This should be followed. This shall be followed. This is a maybe we should follow, right? So we're not dictating. And policies, when you write policies, this will be done, this shall be done, this will be done, this shall be done. And that's the way you write all of your terminology. Okay. So there's the challenge. Okay. So
sorry if I can just maybe a fancy pivot or a squirrel brain, but I'm thinking of the resistance I often experience, and you know about it when we are working with customers doing a data maturity assessment, and we want to score the maturity level by individuals, a view of it, but physically give it a scoring.
Yes.
And it just made me think about how many times people, the passive logic, but we are good at it. You know, we
Yes.
are okay. We meet the standard. Okay,
Yes.
show me how you meet the standard. No, we meet the standard. You know, that person over there does it, and we meet the standard. So very passive.
Right.
It's actually just triggered in me in just understanding the passive thinking or passive logic in many people and all of us. And I'm happy to share a story of when I'm prompting AI, how passive I realize I am, because, oh man, the nonsense it gives me back, it's because of my own prompt. But the point is just, this is a So sorry, I'm just quite,
Excellent.
it's just triggered in me about the data maturity assessments.
Yeah. The way, and then what we do is, Paul, that's what we do. If we don't have clarity, we don't ask for evidence. So show me
100%. 100%.
Caroline?
Yeah, I so just on, can you hear me okay? I'm on Bluetooth. Is it okay?
Yes, we can.
And I find that I have to define policy right at the get-go with governance.
Yes.
Because, you know, we have
you dropped off, Caroline.
policy. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Now we can't. Okay.
So Howard.
Yes.
One of the things I start with is, and I'll pick up with Caroline's word, policy. I ask the person I'm speaking to, I say, who are you and for what purpose do you want to actually discuss policy? Because
right.
If you don't get those two first, you can't get context.
Yeah, but what I am trying to do now is I'm
you're
just
taking
using
the guys down a road.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But I'm just introducing the challenge that we have with paragraphs. So
Yes.
remember, I'm focusing on the narrative track. Yes, I agree with you. We should have the policy well defined, and I mean I'm in agreement. What I'm trying to say is, when we take a business requirement and we quickly go to the conceptual modeling. So what I'm coming back is, if we don't get the information context correct, we create some very interesting data models.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a problem I ran into quite a bit when I was working on the plant.
Okay.
I had a really good set of business analysts that helped.
Great. So here's the active voice. And this is the active voice. So an example is basically we're saying every definition sentence must identify a clear actor or a component as the subject. So what is the subject? For example, single statement, the Data Governance Council authorizes the data management policy. Okay, so there's the subject, that's the predicate, and that's the object that we're getting out. Okay. Now, the nice thing about that, I'm sure you can see it very quickly, is that translates into a conceptual model very fast. Okay, but let's go to, and I'm going to jump this, let's go to the passive voice. Okay, the object is acted upon. The doer is hidden or added as an afterthought. Okay, so look at this. The data management policy is authorized. Okay, now sometimes we're lucky that we've got it all written out. Sometimes we miss it, and then we have to bring this back into the mix to say, who is it authorized by, who and how? What's the escalation trap? And this is our problem when we write with a passive voice. We sometimes forget this, or we believe it's in the previous statement. Yeah. And so we don't always put it in. So this passive voice, now this is harder to model, right? And maybe I'll just pause there. PG or Shane, can you see the difference between the two different voices, the types of voices that we write, and the challenges we get with the data model?
Yeah, I was looking at this and having a bit of sympathy with the passive voice, because the data management policy, if you're going to define that, you are tempted to start with, that you want to say, well, I'm defining the data management policy, and therefore the data management policy is something.
Yes, and so let me show you. So the way we would get that through is like this. So this is the way we would write a definition for a data management policy. Classification rule. And the nice thing about it is that every single statement that you write has got a rule. Okay, data management policy is a governance document. Okay, why do we write it? The data management policy enables data trust. The Data Governance Council authorizes it. The data management policy defines the data security rules, but provides the data quality guidelines. So remember that and where we had security and quality, typically quality is not a dictate. It's saying you've got the guidelines on expectations around fit for purpose. Whereas security is a dictation. It's a definition. This is what you've got to adhere to. When does it happen? Okay, who regulates it? Where does it get regulated? And internal audit verifies policy compliant. All is that, does that make sense in terms of how the definition should be written and how you can translate that into the data model?
So Howard, this is exactly where purpose comes in, right?
Yes.
So if we look at classification, data management policy is a governance document.
Yes.
If I'm talking to somebody in governance, that's what they're interested in. If I'm talking to somebody else, the data management policy is a data management rule set. It is because you've got to get their language, right?
Yeah.
And so you can have a lot of is-as in terms of that. You can have a lot
typically,
of...
you typically don't.
No, tell you what, that's what will happen later on. Because it's in the application that all these problems come out.
Yeah,
it's
but
fine for your
William,
definition.
Hey, William, let's hold on. William, what we are talking about is we have to get the right definitions, okay? And what we're saying is that there will be a single classification. You don't want multiple inheritance. Okay, you've got a single is-a relationship with the parent, and your purpose comes in the why statement. And then you can have multiple whys and whos and whats. Now, these areas are your distinctive characteristics of a term, but it has a single classification.
All right, but then you will have to have prefixed terms to specify, and that will work. Then I can have multiple levels or types or purposes prefixed by. Otherwise, when I'm having general conversations with everybody in the business, they're not going to get it. That's been my experience. I've actually had to specify.
Okay.
But we can get, you know what, that's a low-level detail.
Okay. Now, what we would do when and I did this once before, but the way I like to get these definitions signed off is that you actually cover everything. So you just start off with the classification. Do we agree that a data management policy is a governance document? Now, what I can share with you is when we initially start off.
Not a chance. What is that up there?
Oh, one moment. I think Rob Jackson's is on. One moment. Okay.
Now I'm wondering what Rob Jackson thinks is up there.
Yeah. Me too. But anyway, what is important that you do is you go one sentence at a time and one of these friends at a time. So let's agree that classification. Are we in agreement? Then can we agree the purpose, the why statement? And then can we agree who authorizes it? Now there could be multiple there, and we could have multiple whats, and we could have multiple whens and multiple wheres, and in some cases multiple hows. And each one of these relate to a rule, but it's written as a statement, written as a subject predicate object, and then it's combined together in a paragraph, and I'll show you a little bit later how we combine it in the paragraph. But we've got to get agreement at this level. These are the different rules that we should apply, and these are the characteristics of a data management policy. And I'll pause there. I saw Shane. I think Shane was about to ask a question.
I was, but the moving trucks to see to pick up our boxes. You're taking me down a rabbit hole, right? So, as you said, I'm a big fan of Lawrence Core's beam and the who does what as a way of understanding data for an organization. From a Canvas point of view, with the information product Canvas, there is a box for who's going to use it, why are we building it, right? And so I can see how you're using the 7 or 6 W's as a pattern to solve yet another problem in a slightly different part of the data domain. I love that. Yeah. Where my head's going now, and this is why I'm trying to do a whole lot of mapping on the fly, is actually if we think about storing context for the LLMs, that ability to store that context using those W's for what does the data look like, what information product we're going to build, what's our governance policies and procedures. Like we actually almost have a language that has many lenses that can be used and defined once and used often. That's kind of where my head's at. Followed up by, I should have really listened to my teacher when I was in English in school, which I didn't. I'm going to go, but thank you. I'll watch the video. Catch you later.
Thank you very much. Again, just to check, Caroline, are you able to ask your question? Sorry, I moved on.
Oh, thanks, Howard. Actually, ironically, it kind of came back full circle about that discussion about whether data management policy is a governance document.
Right.
Which was kind of my point. You need to go up a step first and define what you mean by policy. And in my argument, there would be 3 types of policy. There's, as ISO defines it, there's the corporate level government, company policy. You have a topic level policy, which is what this is, and then you have rules, which would be, for example, length of passwords. But a lot of people tend to write very long policy documents because they're trying to do everything all at once. And I've seen a lot of even process and procedural stuff put into what they call a policy document. Right. And that's where things get very squirrely.
Yes, so we've got a rule in the KSU. I've written 16 policies now, and I cannot go over 24 pages. And I've got a well-defined structure, and they basically say no more than this and this. They focus a lot on ensuring that we're succinct and we're describing what's required. Now, when I want to show you something, and please, what I'm suggesting now is that we could have multiple classifications. This is my chosen classification. And I certainly see in some areas, for example, in a claims premium, when I collect the data from all of the customers, I could get many different classifications, right? I could get 3 or 4. Now, that's where we see that we've got semantic differences between the people involved. And I'm just going to show you this. And there's an example of, and I'm just going to increase the volume to say that here you can see there's a premium is an amount. It's a paid amount, it's a charge amount, it's a payment, it's a specified amount, it's a payment amount. And what we need to be able to do is bring it down to the 1. So we've got to now say, yes, these are the 10 people that have 10 different voices. This is what they are saying it is, and we've got to come to an agreement about what it is. And what I like about this process is that you can show the way in which the people are thinking differently, and then we can bring it all together. So there, can you see we've got the purpose. William, can you see we've got multiple purpose statements, and we'll finally bring it all together. But there's a nice process of saying, oh, shucks, now I've got terms that I haven't defined. I've got questions that I haven't resolved, and I can bring together a final definition of this process. Now, this comes from the course that I attended. Caroline, does that...
Carry on.
Caroline, does that answer that question? And you're right, it could be multiple definitions.
Yeah, I think it's the meta definition that I get stuck on sometimes.
Okay. Okay. And the nice thing about, if we talk about the meta definition of classification, is that, and I like that concept of not having multiple inheritance, so we have a single parent. and what is the single parent. And it can go up to people, thing, and level at that level. Yes, William.
So in my experience, the challenge that I've sat with is when you go down to purpose, right? There are different characteristics that get applied, and therefore different places that you can use it and cannot use it. So what we had to do is we had to prefix that word with the purpose so that people were able to use it. Otherwise, it's very good in a model, but it's not practical when people are running around on the plant having conversations with one another.
I'm not sure what you're saying, William.
Okay, so just to use an analogy, we've got a door, we've defined what a door is, etc. But I need to explain to you that we've got a front door and we've got a back door.
Yeah.
And they have different purposes, different rules around them, different securities, different all the rest of it. Yeah. And in a situation like that, you wind up then having to have a higher level statement of what door is, but then you have to have the lower level. And the mistake I've seen people make is they try and put that multiple levels of front door, back door into the same definition space.
I agree with you.
To say,
that's what.
Yeah.
But that's why we mustn't have multiple isms. So the idea in your thing is that the front door is the door, simplistically, and then we'd have another definition for a back door. So we're only dealing with one term at a time.
Exactly.
We're not dealing with
100% right. 100% right. But the challenge we sat with is that people would just refer to the door. And so what we had to do is
we get that. Yeah.
So the challenge is when you've got multiple purposes written into the ISA of door, you mustn't have them sitting there unless that particular purpose is common to all lower level specifications.
Sure. But again, what you're right. So you're going to have to follow this thing and you're going to have to work on it. So
yeah.
For example, if you bring in a lower level thing that's talking to the parent and the parent doesn't apply, the child doesn't inherit what the parent has, then you got problems.
Exactly.
But that's what we got
exactly.
Yeah. So that's a semantic thing that we have to resolve. Okay. Fantastic. So basically we're saying this is the 6 friends and the subject predicate object framework, and we go through these terms and we relate the terms together. And that's how we build the whole process of getting a definition right and getting all the clarity sorted out. So here's just some examples of, I've just given some examples, and this is this is the ISO structure that they use, and we can use that as William was asking there, is that we can have a class statement, a qualifier, then the entity itself, and then a modifier and the type. So we'd have, for example, a class, the policy, the data management policy. So we would qualify the policy to be focusing on the data management policy, which is a governance document or a policy if we had defined one. And we can use this ISO 11179 to get uniqueness and then to qualify something. So as William was, you could have a front door and a back door. Okay. So when we need to be particular about something, we would add that qualifier in that scenario. Okay. So let
me just check if I understand you right. Class would be door, qualifier would be front or back or general.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Or main or master or whatever you want to use.
Correct.
Okay.
And ISO 11179 is a registry where you got to register all the terms, and you go through a library, and that's what Mark Atkins, they have that introverse, and then they can build a knowledge graph of all of the things and the way all the terms are related to each other. Okay, yes, Paul.
No, I was just going to add to that because I know we chatted briefly, but just to add that example of that that field name item, same thing, item of what, or total, or things like that, quantity.
100%, Paul.
And also just thinking about, saw a question from Esty earlier on another group. What is a customer or a client? Or the question was, what is a client at a particular customer that we're working on? And so what is it? Is it, and they're involved in hospitals and things like that. So is it walk-in people buying pharmaceuticals over a counter, or is it naturally the patient? Things like that. So nice to use these qualifiers or this definition to help thresh out the answer that we need to give her.
Yeah.
The other example that I've seen in a party model type problem statement is, what is an employee? Because there's contracted people, there are people that are through preferred partners that provide services, and so are they considered as an employee or not? And it then helps you understand how to construct your party model and those rules. So
you raise a really good point there, Paul. Sorry, Howard. When you are building this for the model, you will go class qualifier. But when you are having conversations with human beings, you have to go qualifier class. You speak about a front door, you don't speak about a door front.
Yeah.
And so you just got to remember how are you going to structure this, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And I think we've gone over the edge. I just wanted to show you the information architecture. I don't think we've got much time to go through it, but it's really focusing on getting our glossary and our semantic layer right before we go to the conceptual model, and then it's the governance around it as well. So that's what the information architecture deals with. Establish a glossary, then understand the concepts using subject, predicate, object, and then introduce structured knowledge. So now how do we, because the knowledge itself can be quite simplistic in a glossary, but we could be using things like taxonomies and ontologies. And of course, what we always got to be careful of as well, is there an industry taxonomy from Accord or from Fiber? Now we're going to run into some challenges that we use terminology different to Fiber or Accord. But we've always got that challenge where we have to say, okay, that's what Accord does, but how does it map to ours? And is there an overlap of mappings? We then talk about the ownership. So, Paul, I don't know if you remember, what is the slide number for those mappings that you did?
I'll give it to you now. It's right near the end.
Okay, so there's
70. The Fiber one is right at the end, but this one here is just to that. Or you want to go there first? Yeah. Okay. This was just, I was going to just bring this up again around that discussion around what things are, the 6 friends, and realizing that. So just sharing my thought process, my passive. When I first saw the hierarchy in the slide, I immediately jumped in and just built this structure here. And this is an Archi view, and you can overlay or embed. You can show the hierarchy in this way, but then sitting there staring at it, thinking, okay, there's more to this, and started asking the questions around the 6 friends, and elaborated that into something more elaborate. And then obviously through conversation again, fine, this all could or should come through just asking those questions. But again, through conversation with yourself, Howard, and also with PG, who checked my elbows and my arrows and things as well. But noticing that in image 2, I had presented that to you, and you asked me a simple question: what is market segment, and how does this fit into the picture? And after we discussed it, this is what the intention was. is that to categorize the different types of customers within a sales or marketing type segmentation. And the question you asked is, but aren't these related? The product and product categories, are they not related directly with market segments? Yeah. And so good questions came through, and then elaborated the model to show that association between those two, the category and the segmentation. And then just chatting to Paul, highlighting, again, now speaking, if I can, flipping the coin to the tool, depending on the tool that you choose, and that's part of the course, is using tools and open software and that, and we've talked about it last week using Archie, that you can start to describe your understanding of what these things are and your 6 friends using the notation and all of that. Right. I mean, I think everybody knows that, but just to highlight that, and you can see the changes that are made while talking to Paul, for instance, and him asking deeper about the 6 friends again, asking those questions again. We ended up with, I'd say, a better version of the taxonomy coming through. Not complete yet, but filling up. I suppose it's a trying to illustrate there's a journey in it as well.
Yeah. So that and if you also think now, for example, if you were to write the product category definition, that associate is a weak verb. It's like product category is associated with a market segment. It's if you think of that as a subject, predicate, object.
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean?
Yes.
100%. This one would be a better one, right? Offered. Yeah. Right. Okay. And it's getting that language right to make sure that your model is going to develop quicker and with less challenges.
Yes. So I find that also interesting, because I think, like, from a consulting angle, you want to help the clients and use their words, right, in the discussion, but you also obviously need to offer as you've just done. So there's always that. How does the customer see this relationship?
What I would think is that, if you are focusing on your subject, predicate, object type of thing, right, then you're not getting into these types of images that abstract.
Yes.
Okay. Now what you're battling with here is having a clear definition of what is product category and what is market segment. And we may have different interpretations. So then choosing that verb is a little bit difficult. Whereas if you start off with a structured definition of the entities on here, then you can quickly pick up the related terms and the different elements that need to be defined.
100%. And I realized also through the chat now, if we did have time to look at the governance, the glossary, I've only addressed one issue, which is assigning a class.
Right.
Looking at assigning a class, I should say. And but there's so much more that you could do, as you said, to elaborate. And so that was just showing, from a course point of view, trying to highlight typical problems that the learner would also experience.
Yeah.
I would think. Paul says no. You says no. You should already know this stuff. But yeah, I'll.
Right. Okay, so this is also the ontology. I'm going to get back to you, William, just to try to summarize that. It's about getting the knowledge structured that we need to use, and we need to bring in that structure. I'm just trying to find where that ontology is. Of course. What slide is it, Paul?
It's let me just find it. I think I related it. It's probably more there's the 56. I think I changed it to that subject area model.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I think what we were trying to do there is show the differences between fiber, and so here's a situation where We have fiber or core defines policy as a contract of insurance, distinguishing it from a quote and an application. Okay, so we need to be able to look at how does a core define it, what has it got in terms of its definitions, and do we fit into that? I think there's a final mapping between so for example, we would have a customer, a cord has insured party, insurer, and this is a carrier, and policy, coverage, claim adjuster. All right, there's those qualifiers coming in.
Yes. Sorry, Howard, it's slide 70. I misunderstood what you're asking. It's coming through there on slide 70.
Okay.
Mapping.
So this is also helpful to be able to understand what other industry frameworks are out there and what does it refer to and how does it relate to what we do now. Yes, William.
Can you go back to the Archimate model that you were on a moment ago? When I put my hand up.
That's going to be.
I think it was slide.
That one? No. Let's go some more.
I suppose it doesn't really matter, excepting that that was a very good one. It was the one that showed Paul's conversation and how it changed.
Oh yes. Okay, it's that 1, 2, and 3. Right.
That's
there we go.
35.
So one of the things that we found very helpful on the plant, I understood we had over 6 million pieces of stuff that we had to deal with. And I mean, there's just so many things and legs and stuff. When we got a term in, we created a term object. And we then created the legs to other objects already in our taxonomy. What that meant was anybody who pulled something in from the what do they call that thing? Basically the index, and dropped it on their canvas, it automatically builds the link that exists.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful because it meant that people weren't going to go and just go and invent stuff. They were going to say, oh, well, we've already got that. And so it's really helpful, especially if we want to get into things like, you know, does the system integrate with something else or whatever the case is? There's tons of stuff. Is this working on another project? So on and so forth. There's a lot of things you can do with Archie. It's really versatile.
Great. And Diva, I just wanted to go to your question. You're saying, is this related to what's referred to as knowledge engineering? Now there's knowledge management. Knowledge engineering would be, and I'm just trying to understand your use of the term. Is it on knowledge graphs, or is it about the transformation of trying to get tacit knowledge to explicit? I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's coming more from a AI perspective, looking at knowledge-based and reasoning systems.
100%. So that SPO is basically the triples that graphs talk about: subject, predicate, object. That's the triple. There's a node and an edge in the node, and you'd follow the SPO on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've seen it there. I think what's interesting for me is that this is all really necessary for, mapping those business concept to data models.
Yes.
But from an AI perspective, when you see the shift from what they call a good old-fashioned AI to machine learning, now generative AI, part of it was to remove this knowledge engineering bottleneck.
But
you are still right. Very necessary here.
And certainly, as you know, it's so true what you're saying. And there's a lot of arguments between things that are human assisted and things that are AI generated, and they talk about the active metadata, and they're saying that the AI can extract all of that and build all of these things. But what lots of people are saying is that like a DLM, a domain language model, the use of an ontology to ensure that we are speaking the same language and presenting the right information, they are making use of knowledge graphs to connect the dots in that situation. Ontologies are being used tremendously in the knowledge graph environment. So the difference, my understanding of the difference between a graph and like a property graph and a knowledge graph is that the knowledge graph contains the ontology. So when we're building an ontology or when we're building these definitions, we can be translating that into an ontology now that the machine learning models and the graph databases have. So they are connected.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Now, one of the things in Diva that I like about having that ontology and having a definition of the way we understand it is when somebody uses the term incorrectly, let's say a customer is engaging with a chatbot, then the idea would be, oh, okay, now there are a couple of possibilities. Either you are misusing the term or you are you presenting an untruth, something that's not true, or you teaching us something that we don't know. Okay, so when we get something that doesn't fit into our ontology, either the AI or the person has identified something we don't know, and then we should take that subject, predicate, object and put it into the ontology and update it, or we say, no, but this is hallucination, or you're mixing the wrong terms or whatever it is. So what is being suggested here is not true. And indeed, that's been used in the healthcare environment where there's an ontology related to health claims. So if you have a claim that is associated with a medical operation, they would go to the ontology related to that medical operation and say, well, oh, but you're using terms that are not part of this. So where did either there's something wrong, you're misleading us, or there's something that we don't understand. And then that would go to a human to resolve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yes, William.
So for your GenAI, LLMs, etc., right? So the question in my mind is, and it's been playing around in my mind for a while, do we start asking AI to give us the answer, but then also please also give us the definitions of the terms that you're using, because I want to understand exactly what you mean, rather than just assuming that it kind of knows what I mean by what I'm saying. Has anybody ever asked that question of AI?
Well, it's actually, there's someone, I saw a really nice paper on someone that was saying, these are the 3 problems that cause hallucination in LLMs. First problem, the user is using the wrong terminology and sending the prompt incorrectly, the its and the ands and the stuff like that. And so then this LLM tries to jump or gap the bridge. So that's the first problem. Now, what they are doing is they're prefixing some of the LLMs and saying, well, did you mean this? Is this what you meant? Is this the right thing? So now we can get a better understanding of what the person is asking us to do. Okay.
Right.
And that can be governed. Then it goes to the LLM. LLM determines a new fact, and then we can go back to say, well, that new thing that they've determined, is it part of that ontology? If it's not, then there's a possibility of hallucination. Or it's something that we haven't understood. Okay, and then one of the things that they're doing as well is they are suggesting that all the LLMs, instead of going to SQL databases and stuff like that, that they go to knowledge graphs, because there's more power in understanding the relationships between the terms and the data, as long as you've got a knowledge somewhere in that situation. So there's 3 avenues of trying to resolve this problem. And William, I have spoken about it before, is you use this LLM as a judge, where an LLM generates content, and then the judge says true or false, toxic or not toxic, and then passes a judgment before that goes back to the user.
100%. One of the challenges we ran into is definition changes over time.
Yeah.
And that presented a different, but we won't go into it here, but it created some interesting challenges.
Look, it's important for, if you load up policies, right? If you load up policies to say a high risk claim is something that goes over this amount, and then you change that guideline and you change that definition, and then all of a sudden you're coming in with less, and then it's considered something different. Now you've got timing issues and temporal issues that you need to focus on as well. So you've got that version management of those guidelines that you're bringing in as well.
Yes, and ripple effects into operations and ripple effects into BI and all of that stuff, right?
Great.
Yeah.
Mr. Bolton, anything else that you'd like to share before we close the session?
I think once again, I learned just as much as everybody, because I'm looking at some of the models and wow, I need to, it's for instance, that discussion you had just now about having single parent. What's the term you used?
Multiple inheritance, yeah.
Multiple inheritance.
Multiple parents, yeah.
I see in a what I tried to create was your semantic framework for doing the work. The structured definition method, and I've gone and given the term to parents and and just things like that. So I'm butchering the structured define method. Right. Don't tell Mark, but I need to fix it up. Yeah.
But remember something about ontologies, right? They're supposed to wind up being many to many, but based on purpose and context.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the different, you got taxonomies and ontologies working together, where you get a structure, and your taxonomy is showing the multiple levels, and then the ontologies branching out between these levels.
Yeah, the best simplified definition that is simplified was an ontology is a set of taxonomies that are related between the taxonomies for any given purpose or context.
Yeah, and that's where the multifaceted taxonomy comes in, and there's a whole. But we'll get to that. But I think it's what I was sharing with Paul is that this structuring of the knowledge and the information before we go into the data model is also very helpful. That we apply some structure to the knowledge that we are creating. Great. Any other questions? PG, anything from your side?
Not anything else. Thank you, Howard. Good session. Thank you, Paul. It's good.
Fantastic. Any other questions? So I think, Paul, you did ask me whether Saudi is using the policies in English. No, they do have a person translating to Arabic, and then to understand it within Arabic.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case, but translation might reintroduce some ambiguity, almost certainly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I just need to pick up on what Rob just said. You know, I honestly believe that this is the new information age. So the same way as we moved into data management, I believe that information management as a term has been abused a lot, right? But I think it's really going to come into its own. There's going to be so much opportunity for human beings to be involved in this, because AI is on the other side of the fence. It's on the inside of digital. It can't know.
Well,
and I think there's going to be a lot of options.
That's the exact debate that Enviva is bringing out. And if you look at Rita's definition, it is saying that AI is learning, and And some people are adamant that it can learn and can remove the human from it. I'm not convinced about that, but others are convinced. And they're basically saying, look, if we go through enough content, we'll be able to work it out. But so that I'm not sure which way that lies. I do tend to agree with you that I prefer the human-generated relationships, but I think it takes too long.
No, so let me rephrase what I was saying. What I mean by that is that humans have a view of the world in context.
Yeah.
AI has a view based on what it gleans from humans.
Yeah.
So if humans can provide that actual context, and we're going to have to get clever about how we do that, because it's about ownership of terminology, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we can do that, then AI's got a chance of understanding what's really going on. Otherwise, what it's going to do is it's going to then determine what the world looks like and tell us, by the way, now you're going to have to do this, because that's what I've decided the world really actually looks like. And we've got to maintain it, right?
Sorry, I thought you were done.
No,
I'm just going to say
it.
you're referring to the current state of AI.
Yes, current state, because the new state is just moving, right?
Yes, it's learning from human generated text.
No, sorry, Devo. Yes.
No, I was just saying it's learning from human generated, data, with LLMs from text. And obviously that's missing a lot of context. So you do need to require the human to provide that context in any domain of application. But yeah, people are working hard at coming up with new architectures and new ways of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So what you say is 100% right, and that is in fact my concern, because the quality of human definition and control is very low. I think we're going to get to a point whereby where AI might eventually say, look, I'll tell you what the world actually looks like. These are the terms and definitions that you will now use. This is what you will and will no longer do. And I'm concerned about that flip-flop. That's really where the battle line lies. And we really mustn't lose that fight, because otherwise we're just pawns in this whole thing, right?
All right. Thanks, William. I think that's
cool. I got to jump.
Okay.
All the best, guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks,
everyone.
All righty.
Great.
Always.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Cool. Thank you very much, as always.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Dale.